have a story to tell. You have a story to tell. I want you to think about the amount of stories that maybe you tell on any given day. Remember going to work, or whenever you go to work, says that what did you do this weekend? And there's a story to tell. Sometimes when we get together for family, at least this happens in my family, we won't be together but 5 or 10 minutes, and you got food at the table, right? And pretty soon, somebody's telling a story. I want you to think about stories that have stuck with you. Yesterday afternoon, when had our second run of boneless chicken wings on the grill, battered chicken wings grilled. And Lori, Jonathan's wife, Jonathan's up in wherever it is, Seattle area this week, Portland, wherever it is. I don't know, it's up that way. So Lori and Miles came over, and Miles is now about 3 months old. And I figured it would be time to watch Star Wars. I mean, it's now time to do this. And it was like, what I just quickly discovered is I was one man and one little guy with 3 women in the house, and I didn't have a vote. And this is how bad it just got. Somewhere around 10:30, 10 o'clock or so, the Wolfman came on. Now, I remember the old black and white, the Wolfman, okay? Bela Lugosi, the whole thing. I mean, that was classic. And they redid it here a couple of years ago. They redid the old one, and it's a color, and it's got really cool special effects. But they did it almost like mimicking the old black and white. So I was like, really had this appreciation of it. And The Wolfman was one of those early movies when I was young that kind of changed my life. You see, it was a couple of years later, I was in my mid-20s or so. We've been married where I'm living out in Illinois. And one of the deacons in my church that I preached at up in southern Illinois, he manufactured ammunition. And the first time I found out that his name was Daryl, that he manufactured ammunition, I said, Daryl, I need some silver bullets. He was like, why do you need silver bullets? In case of werewolves. And he looked at me and just laughed at me. Larry, you know there's no such thing as werewolves. Yeah, but there are such things as silver bullets in case there are. One year went by, 2 years went by, 3 years went by. Daryl, I need silver bullets. No silver bullets. Finally, we had getting ready to move, and we're getting ready to go up to St. Joe, Indiana. And it was about 3 or 4 days before we moved. Daryl drove in, said, I got something for you. And I got this white box, red, white, and blue, top-notch ammo, 357 Magnum, silver bullets, nickel casings. He said, these are for the Lone Ranger. And I said, no, you know, they're for werewolves. He's like, no, this is what the Lone Ranger. He's like, I don't care about the Lone Ranger. These are for werewolves. And we laugh. But the strange thing is that there's power in our stories. You see, we tell and we share stories all the time. There's times when Renee comes home and I'm home, and we will sometimes talk for a long time, just sharing the stories about what's going on at work and life and everywhere else. Then you know that there's times where all you have to do is see each other. And you kind of know the story that's already going on and you don't have to say it. There's power in story. In the book of Acts, chapter 9, we have here the power of Paul's story. His name was Saul. He was a Pharisee. He had studied at the feet of Gamaliel, which would be like, studying physics from Einstein. There's nobody ever been better than Gamaliel at what he did back in Paul's day. And Paul had the chance to sit at his feet, and he decided, you know what? I believe that God is so big and so good that I should stop this Christian nonsense. And he goes out and he goes to the synagogues and he goes to the Jewish leaders and, you know what, give me authority to arrest the Christians so that we can get this thing, as Barney Fife would say, got to nip it in the bud. We got to get this thing stopped. And I don't think that we give Saul, how do I say this? The change between Saul and Paul is a remarkable one. But he didn't change his name for later in life. But this guy Saul had a hatred, had an absolute hatred for this young, small organization called the church. And in Acts chapter 9, we see Saul, what he's doing here in Acts chapter 9, verse 1, is that meanwhile Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. I think we need to grasp. This wasn't just a general distaste. And these weren't just empty threats. He was like, you know what? I think we ought to get Peter. And here's how we can get Peter. And we will take him and we will kill him. And then we'll go after James. And then we'll go after John. We're just going to go right on down the line. We'll get all 11 of them here in about 2 weeks. And you don't ask too many questions and we'll be okay. When it comes to the power of story, I'm reminded of the power of story. I'm reminded of a police friend of mine who was working down in Texoma. He had been on the job for about 2 or 3 months and had a new guy working with him and was showing him how to do driver's license checks. And basically the two of them would get in the police car. They'd sit up there at the stoplight in Texoma, and somebody would come through and they'd just pull them over and they would walk up to the car and he would do, please, sir, can I have your driver's license? And they would go back to the car and call all the information in and get the information and say, thank you so much for your time. And he'd been doing this for about an hour and a half. Not writing tickets, just giving people warnings and doing this stuff. And finally, about an hour and a half into the chief's cell phone rings. A voice at the other end of the phone says, hey, Chief, can we ask who you're looking for? He says, well, we're just doing driver's license checks. Well, if you just tell us who you want, what they've done, and you don't ask too many questions, we'll take care of it. Whoa. Now that's called self-policing right there. Saul was kind of, you don't ask too many questions and we'll take care of this. And so Acts chapter 9 starts off with Saul. He's pretty serious here about stopping the church. You see, he went to the high priest and he asked him for letters to the synagogues of Damascus so that if he found anyone there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, that he might take them as prisoner to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus, here in the NIV version, Acts chapter 9, verse 3, on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground. And he heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up, go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They had heard the sound, but they did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. And so they led him by the hand into Damascus, and for 3 days he was blind. He did not eat or drink anything. Now you and I, in our thing called life, have probably had, at some point in time of our life, a Jesus encounter. And I will go as far to say that I wish that it was this way for all of us, but it's not. Saul had a pretty remarkable Jesus encounter. It is something that absolutely changed his life then and there was no going back. It's, wow, here's a story. You know, I've been in church meetings and evangelistic meetings where people come up and they share their Jesus encounter. I remember a story of a man who was a biker gang member, who was really into drugs and into that whole lifestyle. When he heard the story of Jesus at a funeral of all places, wow, somebody died for me. Maybe I need to take a look at what I'm doing. You see, here's what I've observed. Some of us, we really do want this. We want this remarkable, holy cow, look, I was this really bad guy. And now God came in and I'm a really changed person. Now here's what I've discovered. Sometimes we yearn for this Jesus encounter. And sometimes the Jesus encounter is rather soft and slow, and it's over time. You see, I can tell you about things that Jesus has done for me, and I can tell you some stories that Jesus has done some things in my life. There's a few of them that I've kept for myself and I've not ever shared with anybody. I'll share one here in just a moment, but here's what I want to share with you today. When I was a week old or so, I came home from the hospital, adopted. And from what I've been told, I was at church that next Sunday. I don't remember that, but I was told that. And I would probably guess that maybe I would have to use all my fingers and all my toes to count the Sundays that I've missed since then. I would like to say, you know what, I was really a bad guy. And some of you think, well, Larry, we're still not too sure. But I'll say this much. I've not had this dramatic Jesus encounter that some people have. Here's what I can remember about my decision. It was made down the road here, down near Woodward, Oklahoma, up in Boiling Springs Camp. The Holy Spirit got a hold of me. There was a guy up front when we were singing, you know, you need to, was it Just As I Am, you know, without, you know, saying you give your life to Jesus. And this young man named Mike turned around and looked over his shoulder and pointed pointed right at me because I was sitting in the back row and causing problems. Like that surprises you. I mean, I would sit in the back row and cause problems if I'm not preaching. That's why it's better for me to be up front and not sit down in church. Because I'd be back in the back row causing problems. Probably still to this day. Anyway, Mike turns around and looks at me and he said, he mouthed it. He said, you need to give your life to Jesus. And my lower lip started trembling. I don't want to do this, but I gotta do this. And I walked forward down the aisle there at camp and was baptized that Sunday at church. That's the extent of my Jesus encounter. It's not that remarkable, but it's true. Now, the reality of it is that we've all had a Jesus encounter, whether we recognize it as not. It doesn't have to be a dramatic Jesus encounter. It can be a small, simple, easy to understand Jesus encounter. Wow, Jesus died for me so that I don't have to go to hell. Jesus loved me so that whoever believes in him would give his life, or would not perish but have everlasting life. Oh, I can get John 3:16. Okay. It's a simple Jesus encounter. And just because you've had a simple Jesus encounter doesn't mean it's not valid. It's a good Jesus encounter. But here's the question. We sometimes dismiss our Jesus encounter as not important. And therefore we don't share it. Because we think, well, it's not a really big, powerful story. It's like the guy who got up and went to work and went home. And he did that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Saturday, he watched the sports on TV. And on Sunday, he went to church and barbecued in the afternoon. And on Monday, he got up and he went to work. And then he went home. And he did that 52 weeks a year for 80 years. Still a life well lived. The amazing thing is we dismiss our story. Because somehow we think, well, it's not remarkable. It's not like that one guy who was the biker and, was doing drugs and all that. My story isn't that. And I would say that if you don't have that story, you probably really don't want that story either. Okay? But there's a Jesus story in your life nonetheless. Now here it is. You and I have a story to tell. And I want you to think about what was your Jesus story? And can you tell me that story in 2 minutes? Okay? You see, there's power in the story, but you also have to be able to tell it fairly quickly. The reason I say it's fairly quickly is that this story Paul repeats 3 more times in the book of Acts. He tells it here, he tells it to Felix, and he tells it to another guy about his conversion. And each time it gets a little shorter, and here it starts off with 10 sentences. 10 sentences. Could you come up with 10 sentences that describe how your life was changed by Jesus? Now, I told you a little bit earlier that there's a praise that I'm going to share with you today that I really don't know how to articulate, but I'm going to probably try to do this in just a few sentences, okay? Monday, we were out of town. We were down in Amarillo spending money like crazy. We came back home. Monday night, 11:30-ish, I I say 11:30-ish because I set the clock 10 minutes fast just so I have to do math when I'm tired. 11:30, my body says, hey Larry, get up and go to the bathroom. So I get up and I go to the bathroom. I walk around, I sit on the edge of the bed. And as I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, I'm just thinking, I think I need to stretch because that hotel bed last night, not necessarily the greatest hotel bed. And I stretched, and something in my hip popped. Oh yeah, that's okay. The story gets better. It's okay. We're all good. And I go to sleep, and I notice that when I wake up that I've not flipped and flopped and flipped and flopped and flipped and flopped. And I get up that Tuesday morning, and something has changed. For the first time in a year and a half, my leg doesn't hurt. I'm sharing the story Friday. I was sharing it with Joanne and Mike, and Joanne's there in the driver's seat of her car. I said, I didn't tell you the story. So I told the story real quick. She said, oh my goodness, Larry, what a miracle. My leg didn't hurt. God did something. I have no clue what it is. You see, that's the power of story. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a story about, oh, this is how I came to Jesus because I just kind of went to church all my life. But I want to share that story with you today because it's a story to tell. And I could really simply just say it this way. So I got up at 11:30 to go to the bathroom. I came back, sit on my bed. I stretched, my leg popped, and it hasn't hurt. God did something. You see, you and I have a story. And if you can get your story down real quickly, here's what happens. When somebody comes up to you and they're having a hard day, oh my goodness, how do you do this thing? Really, if that's a life, man, I will say this much. I don't know why, I'm just kind of really stressed out the last couple of days. I'm walking in the building this morning and sitting there talking with HL, and Patty comes around and she's like rubbing my back, and it's like, you have about 3 hours to stop that. I'm really stressed. I'm really stressed too. You know what? By golly, God does something. I have no idea where it is. But I know this much, is that God is moving. We just have to stop and open up our eyes long enough to see it and share it. Because there's power in that story of what God is doing. So when we're thinking about how it is that we do this thing with, because we can't do life alone, it's the power of the story. And so what is your Jesus encounter? Can you say it in about 2 minutes? And then there's this next thing that comes along with it. And this is probably the hardest one of the three. You see, because we can think about our Jesus encounter, and even if you've never tried this, write down what it was like for you to come to Jesus, what changed in your life. Write it down. If you can write it down in 10 sentences or less, that makes it easy to memorize. Makes it easy to tell. It's quick. It's get in, get out. Oh, hey, let me tell you what God changed my life. Here's what he did. 1, 2, 3. Wow. And if God can do that for me, he can do something like that for you. Here's the hardest thing. I'm going to pick up here a little bit, and then let's go down verse 28. There it is. Ananias shows up, he gets healed, he's running through Damascus. And in verse 28, Acts chapter 9. So Saul stayed with them and moved about freely in Jerusalem, speaking boldly in the name of the Lord. He talked and he debated with the Grecian Jews, but they tried to kill him. Now you're a really bad debater. If afterwards somebody wants to kill you. But I want you to see what Paul did here. His life had changed so much that he goes back to the place where he's trying to shut this thing down. And he speaks boldly. Boldly. He speaks boldly. See, this is part of where it is that we get to in our life when it comes to Jesus Christ. Because here it is. Have you ever been out somewhere? And maybe it's like at the fairgrounds, or maybe it's at work. It doesn't matter where you are. And somebody comes up to you and says, I would like to talk to you about Jesus. And you're thinking, dude, you should probably go over there. Because I'm going over here because I don't want to talk to you about Jesus. Or at least I don't want you to talk to me about Jesus, right? Because there is an innate, crazy thing that goes on here. Is that it's strange. You want to set somebody on edge, you just come up and say, hey, I want to talk to you about Jesus. It's like, oh, I'd rather you not. And just as scary as it is for somebody to come up to you and say, oh, I'd like to talk to you about Jesus, is to be the guy on the other side. I'd like to talk to you today about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Because when somebody says that to you, you're thinking, my goodness, you're already nuts. Right? We do this, don't we? Am I the only crazy one here? I might be the only crazy one here. Okay. Got one other person with me, so there's two crazy people here. So, but here it is. For us to say to somebody, I want to talk to you about Jesus. Everybody else is like, dude, I'd rather you not. Because kind of what's coming is all some kind of weirdness, right? We just kind of get that feeling. But if I were to say, I understand how life is rough. And I was in a car wreck a year and a half ago, and the strange thing is that I know that I had a pretty rough week, and I got up and went to the bathroom, came back, sat down on my bed, leg popped, and I haven't hurt since. And there was this dear lady in my church who said it was a miracle, and I'm not going to argue with her. Oh, really? That's a good. You'll listen to that story a little bit. What do you mean? Well, now I want to talk to you about Jesus. You see, our story gets us the right. It gives us the right to talk about Jesus and what it is we believe. And we have to do that boldly because it's anxious for us. It had been a couple years since I was baptized in my home church. And we had gone off to an Oklahoma Christian convention out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Renee, you might have to remind me. Remember that guy's name that I talked to you about? The little black hair, we saw him down in Kentucky a number of years ago. Tommy Oaks, that's it. His name was right there on the tip of my head. Gentleman who spoke that day was a gentleman by the name of Tommy Oaks. And what Tommy Oaks did is that he said at the end of his 2 days of these, he had two sermons, one on like a Friday night, one on Saturday morning. And he said, for $10, what I'll do is I'll send you these two tapes. And I just happen to have $10 left of allowance in my pocket. So I put it in the envelope. About a week and a half later, I get these two cassette tapes. And pretty much all I did for like 2 years was lay down, put the cassette tape in and play, and I would fall asleep listening to a sermon. One's on, just one side, the other side, flip it over the next day. It was crazy, but it's like, hey, I think I want to be a pastor. youth night. It's like, we'll let Larry preach. Good thing I've listened to those tapes so long because I've got the first half of it memorized. I sleep the second half, but I got the first half memorized. And I remember, golly gee, I'm 16, 17 years old, stupid, and have no clue what it is that I'm doing. And our preacher at the time, his name was Paul. Paul was about 6'3", salt and pepper hair, humongous guy. And he says, Larry, Sunday morning, it's Youth Sunday, you're going to preach. Let me tell you how it went for me the very first sermon I gave. I was about your age. I went through my outline 3 times, sat down, I was done in 4.5 minutes. So I'll tell you what, you get anywhere past 4.5 minutes and you're good. And I can remember with my church family that I'd grown up with, and they're all thinking, oh good, the hellion from the back row is going to preach. What is this guy going to say? The strange thing is that about 2 years later, one of the guys from church said, I still didn't get quite part of that sermon because it didn't make sense. I said, I understand. I've gotten better though. About 17 minutes later, I was done with the scariest thing I think I'd ever done in my life. And here's the reality of it. You see, we all have a story. And there's been something in your life that God has done that changed the direction, changed the trajectory, changed your destiny. And there's somebody in your life that needs to hear that story so that they can know about Jesus. Five or 6 years old. I'm at Grandma's house. Grandma played the organ and piano at my home church. She started it when she was 14. She gave it up when she had a stroke in her 80s. Give me just a second. I'm trying to get through this without crying, and I may cry, and it'll be okay. Grandma, why do you play the organ at church? And I can remember her stopping and getting down on my level as she told me the story. She said, well, when George died, that was her husband, died when my dad was about 10 years old. So when George died, I needed a job to pay for the kids. And that was one of the things that I could do was play the piano and the organ. So that's why I kept doing that. But she said, God allows me to play music for people so that they can sing to Him. Said up until that time, I didn't really always put it together. But I get to play the organ so that people get to sing for God. My grandmother told me a simple story about what God did in her life to a 5, 6, 7-year-old person. It wasn't a long story, it was a couple sentences, enough that I could understand. And you have a story too. Be bold. Share it. touch lives when they're little, touch lives when they're old. Share the story. Because it changes people's lives. I'm going to ask if